Okay, ready to go. So good morning, everybody. It's Al Emery with Momentum, and today we're going through end of financial year processes in EXO Business. We have another session scheduled for end of financial year in payroll, and that one's happening next week once the new payroll release is available. End of financial year in EXO predominantly relates to the finance module. It has an impact on other modules, but pretty much the process is done in the finance module. And also, if you're using the fixed assets module, there's some steps to do there. So I'll take you through those. So the main thing we're going to go through is what actually EXO does when you roll end of year, how you go about rolling end of year, and a couple of suggestions for ensuring that works as smoothly as possible. And a lot of the other stuff is really what you would do at any month end in terms of processing and reconciling, but we'll touch on a fair bit of that as well. Okay, so I'm just showing a Word document which is our end of financial year good practice guide, and we'll provide you with access to that on our knowledge base. So a couple of important points about end of financial year in EXO, and I guess they're particularly relevant for people who are used to using MYOB AccountWrite or MYOB Premier or other small business systems. Particularly people who are used to using MYOB AccountWrite. In that system, you only roll year-end pretty much when your accountant tells you to, and it is often months after the actual year-end. In EXO, you must roll end of financial year at the end of June or start of July because the new year and the new period won't exist unless you do. So end of year does the normal end of month process, but in addition to the end of month process, it basically zeroes off the profit and loss account, so it clears out all the profit and loss accounts for the 2017 financial year, and it will post the profit or loss to your profit or retained earnings account as defined in your setup. It does a number of other things. It will update debtor accounts so that the this year total is moved to the last year total. When you start transacting in the new financial year, this year total will be updated. Clears out the this year total on the debtor's account. It does the same things to the creditor accounts, and it does the same things to the totals on the stock items. So often people ask, well, we haven't finished entering everything for this financial year, so if we clear out the P&L and post the profit, what happens then? The answer is that you can still post transactions back into June or May or any prior month you want. And if those transactions would affect the profit, so they relate to a profit or loss account, then EXO will automatically create an adjusting entry in the retained earnings account for the value that would affect profit. Okay? So that's just the way it works. A lot of ERP systems do work that way. A couple of other questions. Can you roll the ledgers separately? Technically, you can, but we have experienced instances where that has caused a problem, so we strongly suggest you don't, and that when you roll end of year, you roll all the ledgers at the same time. Can you roll June, so just do your normal month end now and do the year later? No. You can't process correctly in the new financial year unless you roll the financial year. And we have had to assist clients at times who had not rolled financial year and didn't report it to us until months later, and it required quite a bit of database rectification to correct that. Can you process transactions back into June or prior months? Yes. So long as those periods are not locked, EXO will allow that, and as I mentioned, it will post adjusting entries to the end-of-year profit figure. And then once you're done, obviously it's a good idea to lock the period once your reports or reconciliations are done. And then I guess another related question is your accountant may not look at your year-end accounts or do your tax and give you end-of-year journals until quite some time from now. But that's okay. If and when they need you to process adjusting entries relating to year-end, you can still do that by unlocking the periods and posting those transactions. So just in terms of the steps that you do, the vast majority of the steps in this document are normal steps that you would do relating to any month end. So you're going to enter your transactions as much as possible up to the last day of the month and post to the general ledger. If you are dealing with foreign currency, as per normal, you would update your exchange rates and run the foreign currency calculator, and it will post the FX gains and losses to balance up your debtor or creditor control accounts. That's all done from the general ledger menu, updating the exchange rates, setting your buy and sell rates for each currency that you deal with. That doesn't affect everybody, so obviously if you are dealing with foreign currency, that would affect you. And I'll go through these steps in the software as well. Okay, pardon me, just bear with me. My internet connection has temporarily dropped, so I'm just going to fire up. Like that's back, just bear with me 1 minute. All right, that's back. So then you're processing your foreign currency calculator. So let's just go through a few steps in the software. So I'm on my EXO business system here that you should be seeing. And obviously end of period and end of year is on the end of month screen using the end of period, ticking the ledgers and ticking the end of year option. So we'll come back to that. It's a good practice, as I've already said, to get as much of your June transactions entered in before you roll, because it'll minimize any subsequent profit adjustments that the system would do. And obviously it's a good idea to post the ledgers before you roll. So you would all know how to do that. Good idea to check if there's any unposted batch sitting there. They'll appear in the red banner. From a foreign currency perspective, if you do use foreign currency, you'd already be familiar with this process, which is basically to update your buy and sell rates. Any of those rates that you click on shows you the history of changes that have been made over time. And then once you have updated your exchange rates, you run your foreign currency calculator for June. And if you're not familiar with that, it's basically looking at unrealized gains and losses for debtors and or creditors, if you have them. And those effectively are the difference between relating to transactions that you've entered in your EXO system, invoices or payments, that are at a foreign exchange rate and have not been allocated to an invoice or a payment, and are different to the exchange rate that you've just entered. And EXO will basically post a adjusting journal to the debtor and creditor control account so that they balance, and then it will automatically reverse that journal when you roll the month. So it's a pretty simple process. Other steps you would normally do at month end. So we process foreign currency. Complete as much of your customer invoicing as possible. So whether that's sales order invoicing, job invoicing, you would do that. Allocate as many as your unallocated payments and receipts as you can, ensuring that they're allocated in the right period. So let's just touch on that. Firstly, how do you find whether you have any unallocated payments? The easiest way is reports, debtors reports, debtors payment listing, all dates, and then just look for only unallocated. And that's effectively showing you any payments that are sitting in customer accounts unallocated. Commonly they might be deposits, and if they're deposits and you have an invoice to sales order, then you wouldn't be able to allocate them yet. So let's look at Knight Nickel. I have a few payments, a couple of refunds and an invoice. So we can go to the allocate screen. And if we look at when these transactions were, these are all back in March. So you would want to decide, are you allocating them with the effective date of now, or are you going to allocate them as if they had been allocated back in March? And to do that, you would need to unlock March. So I'm just going to allocate them as at now. Basically pick up all the payments. So you might ask, why is that step important to do before month end? And the answer is, if you have foreign currency, if you don't have foreign currency, it's probably not that important, other than making your statements look cleaner. But the answer is, if you do have foreign currency and you have unallocated payments that should be allocated, then that's going to make a difference to your unrealized gains and losses. Okay, just bear with me. Apologies for connectivity issues. Okay, so we've covered off allocations, we've looked at posting. If you have banking batches, again, good idea to post those. So let's just quickly look at that. So banking batches are used as a way of collating multiple customer payments into one GL posting, which makes the bank rec easier if you're dealing with things like EFTPOS, credit cards, and cash. So you can batch multiple payments together on the same batch. And choose the date you're going to post them at so that it matches your bank rec. So that would typically be the date you deposited the funds if we're talking about cash or checks, and the date of your EFTPOS or credit card settlement on your bank statement if you're using EFTPOS. From a reporting perspective, running your age balances and debtors reconciliation reports, you really could do before or after rolling. The stock valuation report, we suggest you run before rolling. There is a retrospective stock valuation report available, but in circumstances where purchases of stock are posted back into a prior period, there can be a difference in running a retrospective stock valuation report to a current stock valuation report. So in our view, it's a good idea to run your stock valuation report at month end before rolling and PDF it, and then you still can run it after periodically, but the PDF will be the best snapshot of what your stock was at that point in time. So all of those reports, as you would already know, are on your end of month menu. So your debtors, age balances, creditors, reconciliation reports, stock valuation report. Depending on how your system's been set up, this one that I'm running on the end of month menu is not a retrospective report. As you can see, it's not giving me the choice to select a date. So depending on your version of EXO, the report that launches from this button, you would know if it's a retrospective one, because if it is, it'll give you the option to select the period. If it's not giving you the option, then it's basically a as at right now stock valuation report, and you can obviously run that and PDF it. Other stock valuation reports will be on the stock. Okay, so when it comes to actually the year-end process, there's a few things that we would suggest that you do. One is that before you do it, you take a backup and have all users log out of the system. It's about the only process aside from an upgrade that we would suggest you have users log out. Okay, so the easiest way to manage that process is to use easy maintenance. Most, if not all, of our customers have that utility, which is an on-demand backup, and it also allows you to look at who's logged in and terminate their login if need be. So easy maintenance allows you to back up all of your databases simultaneously, or just your selected one. And what it typically does, unless you tick the backup only box at the bottom, is it actually updates your test system with your live system. But it basically does that by taking a backup. So even if you don't have that ticked, you're still taking a backup. So you would run your backup. When that's done, ask everybody to log out. You can then check by looking at the current logins, and it will tell you in each module who is logged in, and ideally you only want that to be you. In easy maintenance, if you select a person who's logged in, it will show you the login name of the person and when they last saved a transaction, and then if you right click, you can actually terminate that login. So once you've run your backup and all users are out, then you would do your end of period. And before you do the roll, this is in our document very quickly, we suggest that you check that the next financial year is set up correctly. Okay? So before you roll, click on the financial year button. The financial year in EXO typically is a 12-month financial year like any other system, but it can be configured differently for different clients, and some clients have a 13-period financial year or month-end dates that don't align exactly with calendars. It's unusual, but it can be done. In this screen, there's a current year tab, so this is the year up to 30 June 17. You want to check that the next year tab is firstly populated with 12 months, and that those months, the dates are aligned correctly with the dates that you would expect. So you can see that in my system, they're not. The easiest way to correct that is double-click the period, click on that dates between, go back to dates in July and save it, and it will correct them. So you don't need to manually select the dates. Most likely the dates will be correct already, and you won't need to do this step, but in my demonstration system they are incorrect, which means it's possible. So just quickly go through the dates, toggle those options. Right, so we basically should be seeing that the dates for each month match a calendar month. If this was blank, you would have the option to load, and that would effectively copy the calendar setup from your current year to next year. Okay, so once that's done, then you can roll. So definitely do check the financial year before you roll. Then basically do your steps to tick all the ledgers and tick end of financial year and tick take business analytics snapshot and roll the period. You'll get a warning if the system has identified any transactions not posted to the general ledger. There shouldn't be, but I've got some banking badges that I didn't bother posting. The next message is just letting you know that these ledgers are being posted. And because I'm doing it, today, which is the 16th, it's telling me I'm doing it prematurely. So you wouldn't get that message if you do it on the 30th. This is a standard message that happens at month end. So are we wanting to create unrealized FX gains and losses? Yes, we are. That message would only appear if you're using foreign currency. So that financial year checking I just did is now the system is telling me that the financial periods that were in the next year tab have now been moved to the this year tab. Do I want to double check them? Let's have a look. Now you can see that my current year is July 17 through to June 18, and my next year is blank. End of year is complete. Everything rolled successfully. Age balances were updated. Year ages were updated. All looks good as far as the system is concerned. I normally then do a refresh settings. Okay, then a quick way you can check that everything's good is that the P&L for July should be 0, which it is. And if we look at year-to-date June, it'll be the full year. If we quickly look at any account, like the sales or income account, you'll see that the full financial year for last year has values. Then there's a gap to the current year, and we're now showing July with 0 value. And a year-to-date value of 0 because year-to-date we're only talking July. So that tells me that that account has successfully been cleared. Same if we look at a debtor. You'll see that this month, this year are now 0. Last month, last year now relate to June or the full financial year ending 30 June. Same will be the case for creditors, same will be the case for stock. Okay, the next thing you need to do if you're using Exo Analytics, which is the dashboard module, is it has its own financial year, which is a little bit unusual, but it does. So before it's going to start working correctly in the new financial year, you need to open Exo Analytics, go Set Up Analytics Years, and create your 2018 financial year with start your normal financial year. Then once you've done that, you set up the month. So you choose the year. Click the load button. And then that should give you effectively the same as your general ledger financial year, your months for each period in the year that you've set. So it's a little unusual that the analytics or sales reporting module has its own year, but that's the design, so it does need to be done to make that continue working the way that you would want it to. That's in our end-of-year checklist and process document as well. So I'll quickly reflect back on that document. So we've done our backup using easy maintenance. We've checked all of our logins. We have checked the financial year and made sure that next year was set correctly. Checked each month. Rolled the period. Checked that everything rolled correctly. And seen the successful message. I've just quickly covered off setting up the year and months in Exo Analytics, and I'll also quickly cover off on fixed assets. Okay, so let's quickly look at that. If you are using the assets module, asset register, there's an end of year process to do. Normally you would run depreciation first, so I'll quickly do that. So I'll calculate into post my depreciation. That posts the depreciation journal for June, and then in your utilities there is a year-end rollover where you basically nominate 30 June, run end of year, and that's basically doing a similar process to the general ledger rollover where any year-to-date year-to-date depreciation figures for the assets are rolled into last year depreciation figures, and then the year-to-date figures for this year would reflect zero. So current year 0, total depreciated value incorporates all prior years. So it's a pretty straightforward process. Just a few things on reconciling. So I would probably not describe reconciling as an end of financial year process. It's really something that should get done every month or at least every quarter. And you might have clearing accounts or balance sheet accounts that you reconcile on a regular basis. And every time you do your BAS, you would be reconciling your GST report to the BAS statement. We use the bank rec feature to reconcile general ledger accounts, so you can use the bank rec feature to reconcile any account. It doesn't need to be a bank account. GST I probably wouldn't recommend because there'd be a very high volume of transactions. It's really just a matter of checking that the reports match the general ledger. Other sort of lower volume accounts like payroll liability accounts are quite effective way of reconciling those just through the bank rec. So just quickly on GST. First thing we normally look at is, are there any errors? So there is a tax amount variance report that you can run for any month or any quarter. So what it's designed to do is to compare the actual tax that was entered on a transaction, and it's more likely that there's going to be errors on the creditor's side of things than debtors, to the calculated tax amount based on the tax code that was selected. So normally anything that's obviously 0 or 1 or 2 cents is rounding. Anything that's a higher amount is likely to be a data entry error. In our experience, it's almost always on the creditor side, and it might be where a supplier has some items that have GST and some don't, like Telstra, and the operator has just basically entered one line and overwritten the GST amount rather than split it into 2 lines, one with and one without GST. So that's the first thing we would normally check. And then the second is your tax report by rate type. Which you can run based on dates or you can run based on periods. So the report breaks down debtor and creditor transactions based on the rate selected when the transaction was processed. Obviously, things like export sales have no GST. The value at the end of the report would be your net GST payment or refund in the GST total, and the sales totals and purchase totals should match the totals on the BAS worksheet. Okay. BAS worksheet being the BAS screen for the same period. So I've just run this worksheet for June, so it obviously doesn't match the report I was looking at, but basically for the same date selection, the totals on this screen should match the totals on the report. This BAS tax return allows you to drill into the source transaction. You can copy and paste that to Excel and look at any unusual tax amounts that might cause it not to reconcile. As I mentioned, the bank rec is an effective way of reconciling balance sheet accounts. Okay, so the recs that I've done only relate to the bank account, but there's no reason why I couldn't reconcile my super payable account, my PAYG account, up to any date I like, and basically tick those items off against a payroll report, for example. So any general ledger account that's defined as reconcilable. So you can see this current list is not a list of every account in the general ledger, but account groups can be defined as reconcilable or not. And you can see that I've made my current liabilities basically reconcilable. Okay, entering year-end adjustments. So I'll touch on a couple of examples of that. One is bad debts, and others is journal adjustments that your accountant might give you. Okay. If a customer owes you money and you can't recover that money, then you want to write that debt off against the bad debt account. You don't usually want to credit the invoices because that effectively credits your sales. You really want to incur a bad debt expense. And it's my understanding that that can also take into account GST because you're entitled to an ATO refund on GST that you can't recover. So the best way to do that, let's just find a debtor that we're going to choose as our bad debtor. Let's say Daniel Payne. Is to process a debtor adjustment. Debtor adjustments can be entered with the date you choose, the amount you choose, so $6,050. So if I'm writing that off, I'm actually entering negative $6,050. The type is a write-off. I am accounting for GST. I'm entering it as a bad debt. And I'm entering it to the bad debts general ledger account. And if I wanted to, I could attribute that to a branch. Okay, so when you do that, it then pops the allocation screen, so I can basically allocate that write-off against the invoice that's unpaid, and if there are multiple invoices, I can do that as well. So that clears out the debtor and updates your bad debts account. So we have had customers with a little confusion on how to do that, whether they should do a credit note or a negative payment. I don't think it's either of those. It's a debtor adjustment posting to the bad debts account. The next one that would happen with year-end adjustments is usually your accountant would give you year-end journals to do, and those are just basically from the GL screen. Obviously, if they're wanting you, if you're receiving those journals from your accountant several months from now, but they're relating to June, then you would need to unlock June if it was locked, it probably would be, and then enter the journal. If your year-end journals you receive from your accountant are lengthy, there's lots of adjustments for whatever reason, it's possible to paste into this screen from Excel. So if you have a spreadsheet with what those journals are, the spreadsheet has the same columns, general ledger account, description of the journal, invoice number and check number leave blank, but put columns in the spreadsheet for those, and then a debit or credit amount. You can paste that spreadsheet, and it will just basically populate this screen with those lines, add up the debits and credits and the balance, so you can check it, and then you can post it. And end of year we've covered. So that was the plan for today, is just to give you a good overview of the steps relating to end of year. Many of those steps really relate to end of month or end of quarter that you're probably doing already. But the end of year, particularly wanted to point out that we recommend 1, take a backup, 2, all users out of the system, 3, check your financial year before you roll, then roll, check a couple of things, and then everybody can log back in and carry on. It just means if there is a problem, a major problem, we can quickly restore from backup, from the backup that you've taken, and deal with whatever needs to be resolved. So if there's any questions, fire away.
Can we get that report sent to us?
Yes, we're going to upload it to our website. There's a knowledge base on our website.
Okay.
So we'll send you out an email letting you know when that's available. That will be later today.
Oh, great. Thanks.
No problem. As I mentioned earlier, that we have a separate webinar coming up for payroll, which relates to the new release, the compliance release that's coming out, which has new tax scales, working holiday maker adjustments, FBT adjustments, and that will take you through the process of how you manage FBT at year end, getting your payment summaries issued to your employees, and making any adjustments you need to make before you start processing in the new financial year. Alrighty, so if there's no further questions, thank you everybody for attending. We will upload the good practice guide pretty quickly for you and let you know when it's available. And we'll talk to you again next Friday. Thank you.